as an advisor to deep tech scale-up businesses, what's your advice for anyone who's perhaps a bit earlier in the journey than we are, or at a similar stage to us?
Get out the lab. So the lab is so important. It's one of the reasons I love working with deep tech businesses. I've always said to you, if the lab results are good, you can do anything, and that's always been the case. But getting out the lab, the time that you spend in the market, it's where you make the relationships, both to create advisory boards, but also start early customer conversations, start gathering those problem statements. And it really does feel that it's never a waste of time to be in the market.
Hello and welcome to the Blueprint Sessions. We're deep diving into the brilliant minds that I get the pleasure of working with to turn our vision into a reality. Today, I'm really honored to have our chair of the Commercial Advisory Board, Anna-Lisa Wesley, here with us today. Anna-Lisa is a management consultant and more recently a deep tech advisor with a specific focus on commercial strategy and growth. It's a pleasure to have you here, Anna-Lisa.
Good to see you.
Good to see you again. So we're going to get straight in. You've had quite the range of experience in highly regulated fields and working with large corporations. What convinced you to make the transition from that world into the sort of fast-paced, high-stakes, deep tech space?
It was a couple of different steps, really, but actually there's a consistent thread that runs between those big banks, big energy and water companies where I was advising before, and the deep tech scale-ups that I work in now. The stakes were really high there too, and they're really high here. These were regulatory environments, people's jobs and reputations were on the line. It was really important work that we were doing there. It was very urgent, very much like the work that we do in deep tech and scale up. I think what really attracted me, though, was to have more influence. So you can do really good advisory work in large organizations, but ultimately you're slightly at the hands of the other cogs in the machine. And it always amazed me that when I first started in the startup world, that I'd speak to the management team one day and I'd go in the next day and their website had changed and their pitch deck had changed, and it was like driving a Ferrari rather than a big oil tanker. But there's a lot in common, These are management teams that have a lot riding on their shoulders, where they need to make really good decisions, and that's the kind of work I really like to do.
Yeah, fantastic. And just carrying on with that in mind, for deep tech scale-ups like those that you work with, we're often taking on very large global challenges as very, highly focused teams and lean in size.
Yeah.
What are the key enablers or key considerations for scale-ups when tackling large global opportunities like AMR in our case?
It can feel like it's a problem that's just too big to solve, and I think a lot of people who've gone before you have felt that. Yeah. I always love the phrase, how do you eat an elephant? And one bite at a time. And I think that that's the approach that successful deep tech scale-ups make. They break down the problem. They're not trying to solve the whole of the AMR problem on their own. They recognize they can't do that on their own. What they look to do is play a role in the solving of it. They're very focused on the part of the problem where they think they could have the biggest impact, and they gravitate all of their resources, albeit a small amount of resources. They place them in the place it matters most. And I suppose that's why you often get the David Goliath sort of analogy going on. So a lot of the work on with FluoretiQ has been, where can we go first to have the biggest impact on that much bigger challenge of AMR?
Indeed. So pulling on what you said earlier, there are two aspects to it. It's really the communication of the offer to the people who need a solution, and the second bit is about partnerships. But let's start with the communication piece. What are the key elements required for a deep tech scale up to efficiently communicate their solutions to the market? And do you have any examples of any company you've seen that has done this well, and what do you think made it work?
I think that sometimes deep tech leaders can be shy about communicating the science behind their technology. I think they worry that people aren't going to understand the science. And I'm no scientist, but I love a bit of science, and I quite often find myself asking for more science. I think there's a little bit about being worried about giving too much away, and of course we always have to be careful about that we aren't revealing too much about the secrets behind the business. But most customers do want to understand how this technology is different. They want to understand how this technology is going to solve their really tricky problems. So the most important thing is to be able to extract from the customer in their language the problems, that kind of slices of the elephant, the problems that they're trying to solve right now, and then lay on to that what's so smart about the science in the solution. So it's definitely picking the parts of the solution to describe that are needed. There's a business that I think does that really well here in Bristol called Astral Neutronics. They are a fusion business, and most people would think that fusion is not for the realm of the mere mortal, but they do somehow manage to explain enough about fusion for you to be able to understand why this technology is so unusual, and why the way that they've developed their fusion technology is going to unlock a part of the market that has never been able to be unlocked before, and in this case it's the production of medical isotopes. And by doing that, by explaining just enough, they're able to create a single language within their own business that everyone can speak. So whether you are a scientist or an engineer, or more on the commercial side or the legal side, you can all speak the language of fusion, and that actually helps remove silos within the business as well. And I think it's something, Neciah, you've done really, really well as well. So whenever anyone comes into FluoretiQ, the first thing we do is go into the lab. And we put a lab coat on, don't we? And we put our goggles on, and we get a sense of belonging in that science space. And I think that means that we then take that into the market in conversations with customers, with investors, and we're able to set out why FluoretiQ's offer is so different.
Yeah, right. Thank you. And just carrying on from there, the second element of what you were sharing about taking on global challenges is understanding that you can't do it by yourself. And so it highlights something else to me, that is partnerships. And often for small companies, we can be really successful at finding those first few pilots, but then your area of expertise is really moving from those first handful of customers to true scale. And so what's your advice around ensuring that startups are well positioned and scale-ups are well positioned for long-term partnerships with both the investors who need to fuel the business, but also the customers who also benefit from this?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to knowing your worth. As a deep tech scale-up, you have a treasure that the market needs. And if the market doesn't need it, it's not a treasure. The work by being in the market, by gathering those problem statements, you get to build a real sense of organizational confidence that it doesn't matter how small you are, you've got a really valuable role to play, as I was saying earlier. Then it's a case of making sure that you're meeting the customer in their space. So of course your technology has to work, but it also has to work within the context of use. So operationally it has to be effortless. We sometimes call it non-disruptive disruption. So you want to disrupt, but not in a way that's going to make life difficult for often those much bigger partners that you're going to be working with. The commercial case needs to stack up, but that doesn't mean it needs to, the future commercial case needs to stack up today. There needs to be enough of a commercial proposition to stack up for them to be willing to take it one step forward with you. And that's what that partnership is all about. So making sure that the commercial, the operational, and then of course the hygiene of your product working are there. They all come together to build the sort of long-term relationship where you've got mutual respect. I mean, if you can't get that sort of peer-to-peer relationship going, it's going to be very hard to build a long-term partnership with some of these organizations.
And that is crucial. So there's also another side to all of this, and it's from the customer's perspective. Many of our viewers will be busy vets, busy clinicians. And whilst there's an awareness that the problem exists and there might be cool new solutions out there that are fit for purpose, how do they go about assessing, or how do they build confidence that it is worth their time to investigate solutions like ours and like other deep tech scale-ups who are really trying to move the needle and improve the efficiencies and the outcomes for patients and clients?
I think that a business owner it doesn't really matter which industry the business is in my experience, they have three absolute priorities, that they're obsessed with. So, are we able to grow this business and the impact that this business can have on our customers and our existing customers? Are we able to operate this business in a way that makes it easier and more cost effective over time? And are we able to, as a business, keep adapting and staying relevant? And I think they're the three things that probably keep you awake at night as well. Anyone who has had to manage a P&L, they're the three things that you think about. So that has to be front of mind for us as well. So when we're going into their space, we need to be able to draw a very strong thread between what we're going to talk to them about and one or ideally all three of those things. I think though then it's about just removing the barriers to adoption. So it's not asking them to sign up to a whole long-term commercial partnership. It's about just asking them to take a first step with you and making that first step as easy as possible. And I think one other thing about working in the large corporate and now is that difference that we talked about right at the start is camaraderie. That is something that I've just got from my life now, working with startups and scale-ups. We always have a great time, even when it's hard, and thank goodness, because the work's quite hard, isn't it? And I think that's the same. You need to bring that sense of camaraderie and fun to those customer relationships, and sometimes that does mean breaking down a bit of the formality, I think, that they would naturally bring, and just lead through, this can be fun, we can do fun work together, it doesn't need to feel risky, we'll run just the right amount of risk together to feel ever so slightly uncomfortable. But just to, enough to then get us to the next decision point. That's how to do it, I think.
Yeah, brilliant. So you, as the chair of our commercial advisory board, I have the pleasure of working with you, but you also have a really great vantage point on all that we're doing. So in your opinion, where do you see our biggest challenges and therefore opportunities in the near term?
Well, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity, because I'm absolutely loving it. And we've got such fantastic people around the board, haven't we? And then those people around the board have then got their sort of tendrils out into all sorts of other brilliant advisors and supporters. And I think that's always what you get from something like a commercial advisory board. So yeah, it's a lot of fun so far. So commercial is, people think commercial sales. And of course, that's only one part of it. At a minimum, there is a two-sided coin. So demand, absolutely, we need to be out there stimulating demand. And that always feels like the most important problem for a commercial team, until the point that the demand comes true, and then you start worrying about supply. So I think the biggest challenge for a scaling business that's first of a kind and making a market is balancing that demand and supply, because you just think you're comfortable with demand, and then the next thing, that a minute later you're like, well, how am I going to fulfill this demand? And that's the fun of it. But it's also where some of those broader relationships that you've been developing in other parts of the world, that gives you the agility to respond to the demand as it comes in.
Indeed, thank you. And a bit more general now, as an advisor to deep tech scale-up businesses, what's your advice for anyone who's perhaps a bit earlier in the journey than we are, or at a similar stage to us?
Get out the lab. So the lab is so important. You know, it's one of the reasons I love working with deep tech businesses. I've always said to you, if the lab results are good, you can do anything, and that's always been the case. But getting out the lab, the time that you spend in the market, it's where you make the relationships, both to create advisory boards, but also start early customer conversations, start gathering those problem statements. And it really does feel that it's never a waste of time to be in the market.
So in your experience, what were the key things that deep tech scale-ups and startups had to do in order to communicate their complex science to the waiting world? And do you have any examples of those who've done it well and what really worked?
Building your reputation, leading the market, and understanding where to place your really, really finite resources. Only by being in the market can you do that. And I didn't coin this phrase, but I absolutely love it. And that's that the customer pulls the product out of the startup.
So interesting one.
Works every time.
That is so true. And thanks for the brilliant advice along the way and guiding our commercial strategy. So I'm going to wrap up now with a bit of a left field question. So if you were to represent yourself with an animal, which one would it be and why?
Well, it could be my dog, which we've used to open a couple of commercial relationships, haven't we?
I think she's an honorary member of the team now.
She is. We get Maple aboard seat. So you gave me a heads up on this one, and I asked my son. He said iguana. And this was sort of instinctive, iguana. And so I looked up an iguana, the characteristics of iguana, and it turns out that iguanas have tremendous vision, including through a third eye on their head. So I thought that was relevant. They have sharp teeth, which I mean, I probably have been accused of that. But then, the final thing was that they have a unique ability to shed their tail and regrow it again when in danger. And I think if I look back on the last 25 years of my work, I think I have shed my tail and regrown it a few times. So yeah, I'm going to stick with that, iguana.
Brilliant. I never thought about an iguana in that way before, but thank you for sharing that. And thanks for your insights and dropping in today. And if you found this video insightful and the content really helpful to you, please like, share, subscribe, and subscribe to the channel for future episodes as well. And remember that fast and accurate diagnostics unlocks the right antibiotic the first time around, which is better for our pets, better for our planet, and better for people. Thanks for watching.